Okay. Hello, guys, once again. Welcome to this third part of chapter 1 of Zizek's Freedom: A Disease Without Cure book. We are going to tackle the third part. I want to be repetitive. It's the most abstract part. It's called Freedom, Knowledge, and Necessity. It's rather complicated, but at the same time fascinating. I cannot deny that. I wouldn't deny also that understanding this part was kind of challenging for me, and I don't know, guys. I hope to instill curiosity also in you. Maybe you wanna give a personal look into this part. You want to give you would like to give me your own opinion. I would love to hear those. Sharing, commenting. I am really passionate about this book. I'm really passionate about this understanding, at least trying to understand. I'm not here claiming that I am understanding this. I think sometime I understand it, but this wants to be something out of myself, like genuinely out of myself for you and for whoever is interested in the philosophy genre. So let's dive into this third chapter, the relationship between freedom, knowledge, and necessity. We enter the question, the relationship. We enter here the question of the relationship between freedom, necessity, and knowledge. The Spinozean Marxist tradition was unfortunately under the sign of Friedrich Engels' definition of freedom as insight into necessity. So now give us an historical perspective on how freedom, necessity, and knowledge were intertwined with one another. The first one is the Spinozean vision, typical of Engels. I am free when I know the necessity and I act upon it. This concept is rather straightforward. Whenever we are knowing the necessity which triggers our action, we are free. So, as straightforward as this may sound, if we dive more into the meaning of this statement, we realize that it's kind of complicated to get whether necessity is anticipating freedom and freedom is just some kind of byproduct which is accessory to the process of necessity. So it's kind of confusing, this definition. Indeed, afterwards, Zizek says it himself. If I know necessity, does this affect in any way necessity? Or is my knowledge just an epiphenomenon, which is a byproduct, not something that participates, but something which is under the process of necessity? And necessity itself realizes independently of it. Or is my knowledge itself determined by natural necessity? Anyways, long story short, he's stating that this version is not complete. Now let's dive into Hegel's point of view, which is as notoriously Hegel is notoriously known. There are three philosophers, in my opinion, which are notoriously known to be overly complicated and at the same time fascinating to read. I've never read either of these three. Lacan, which is the most recent one. Then there is Hegel, and then there is Kant. Lacan, Hegel, Kant, notoriously the most difficult philosophers to ever read. Also Heidegger. I've read some things of Heidegger, but I don't know. For as far as I'm concerned, And as far as I've read in like websites, these kind of things, those three are the unholy trinity of philosophy. Anyways, Hegel says something different. For him, freedom is the truth of necessity. This means that knowing a necessity actualizes it. The simple fact of knowing a necessity makes it real. Is this not the case, especially when the agency that takes note of something really happening is some figure of the big other, of the real, like the bureaucratic state agency? So he's basically saying, isn't this statement confirmed by the fact that whenever the big other, the government, the order which is monitoring us, which is influencing us through its symbolic frame and its regulation, isn't this statement more true when such an order recognizes a necessity of us? Doesn't it even make it more real? I hope I made myself clear. And to justify, to put fuel into the fire of such a statement, Zizek makes a rather controversial example, talking about the tragic end of a young woman who wanted to change her sex to male. So basically, the context was this: there was this young woman who undergone a transition process, supported by the environment who was around her, family, friends, people were actually taking her hand towards the transition process, or taking, as I might want to specify, taking his hand towards the transition process. And the thing is that there was no sign of imbalance, no sign of regret. Zizek says that as soon as the symbolic order acknowledged the fact that she transitioned into a male, well, she took her own life. As if the entire weight of the process was actualized in such a gesture, in such a symbol, in such a confirmation. Like whenever you know that you are something, it's a thing. But whenever you take out this something and another, the other, realizes it, acknowledges it, it's made more real, it's made more actual, more true. I don't want to go in details on why Zizek specifically says that she or he took its life in such a way because of such a reasons, but still this is a powerful example to support what Hegel was saying before. Knowing a necessity is itself sufficient for actualizing it. The minimal gap between what really happens and its symbolic registration opens up the space for the opposite, no less paradoxical case. And here we have the cherry on top of the cake. So, what about necessity as fate which realizes itself only through being known? So, basically, it's paradoxical because if you know your destiny, it's kind of intuitive whether that destiny is infamous or not. Now, precisely when it's infamous. If it's not infamous, we might talk more on this, but when it's infamous, if you know your destiny intuitively, you try to do whatever you can in order to avoid it voluntarily, using your freedom, your free will, moving into reality in order to prevent such a destiny to realize itself. Well, Hegel is saying totally the opposite things, guys. Hegel is saying that the moment you know the destiny, the moment you know your fate, is precisely the moment where you cannot avoid it. So, necessity as fate. So, necessity becomes destiny. Necessity becomes fate. Fate realizes itself only through being known. This is the specific statement, the specific condition under which fate, which is like masked by necessity, realizes itself. It's interesting. It's very interesting. Let's try to think about some cases in which we were on the blink of catastrophe, knowing it was a catastrophe coming, but we still couldn't stop it. So this knowledge of the destiny that was oncoming wasn't enough for us to stop it. Examples? Well, COVID-19. In Italy, we knew about this virus far before it reached our boundaries, our borders. Yeah. Nonetheless, everyone was living her life happily, just reading some news on the internet, not concerning minimally about the destiny that was about to actualize itself into our own reality. Yes, we can argue that it was sudden, it was rather quick, the spreading process of the virus, but honestly, like, why didn't we take it more seriously? Like, I mean, China, it's big, it's very big, and yes, one could argue that there are a lot of people, so the virus might spread quicker, but China's regulations are kind of stiff, are strict. China is not an unorganized country. So we should have definitely taken things more seriously. Another example that luckily hasn't yet realized itself is the climate threat, the global, how to say, climate change. Yes, the climate change threat. We know that there is something awaiting for us. Will we be able to change our fate, so to call it? Is it really? Are we destined to such a fate? Are we destined to climate tragedy? It's interesting. What is the escape rope from such an inevitable destiny? Well, namely, Zizek states that if one accepts fate as inevitable, one can break its grasp. So you can free yourself from the chains of fate only by accepting it and not trying actively to avoiding it. Those are two different things, in my opinion, substantially different things. The fact that we can make disastrous decisions even as we foresee their consequence is the great unsolved mystery of human behavior. So, for example, there is an important lesson in this about how ideology function nowadays. Economic or social determinists like to emphasize how social processes are objective trends which actualize themselves independently of our awareness or ignorance of them. Our knowledge is just a secondary epiphenomenon. So basically, nowadays, people are thinking that these kind of social processes are unstoppable. We may witness how to call it? We may witness, how to say, I am forgetting the particular term, but the the revealing of this of such a phenomenon only by a passive position, only by our passive subjective position. We cannot actually make a change following Hegelian views and nowadays economists' views. But as before stated, as mentioned before, the Hegelian counterpoint of Zizek is the fact that we are facing things with a wrong notion of them. We should be facing things with consciousness, but not with the consciousness we are used to nowadays, but with a so-called wrong consciousness. This approaching the inevitability of the fate, which is a radical different approach from trying to escape from it. And yet, another twist to this complex interconnection of factual necessity, knowledge, and freedom here is the following. Knowledge alone doesn't guarantee that I will act accordingly. Not only can I act in disavowal of what I know, knowledge itself can serve as the fetish that allows me to disavow the reality known to me. So, well, whenever somebody is like lecturing you over a thing that you're doing badly, the fact that you may answer them that you already know the correct behavior, the correct action that you should have done instead of the one that you're doing currently, may function as a fetish, you know, that it's fueling itself. Ideology functions less and less like a symptom and more like a fetish. So what is the main difference of such a statement? Symptomatic ideology is a type of ideology typical in the authoritarian regimes of the 20th century, 19th century, from which you could be freed, provided that the symptoms of your ideology were counterfeited by a reason strong enough to deny them. So in such a way of reasoning, your symptoms would fade away, and the knowledge of the truth, so-called truth, would make its space into your mind. So it's a rather binary dialectical exchange between symptoms of the ideology and cure of it. With the fetishist ideology, it works different. Fetishist ideology is typical of capitalism ideology. And in capitalism ideology, the knowledge of what it's correct to do is inscribed into the ideology itself, making it far more difficult to get away from those toxic and distorted mechanisms. Basically, the fetish is not the element to which I hold so that I can act in ignoring what I know, but is the knowledge itself, the fact that I'm capable of doing such a thing, that is the fetish. I know very well what I am doing, so you cannot reproach me that I don't know what I'm doing. And in such, following this statement, we can also say, we can see particularities of this fetish under like normal daily life circumstances, when, like, for example, somebody states that I don't know, he's a dishonest person or cheater, like supposedly when you're dating with somebody. Have you ever met somebody who's publicly announcing some of their flaws? Like, I'm a cheater, I am a bastard, I am cold-hearted, or such a thing. The thing is, why are you telling me you are a cold-hearted person, or whatever definition you might recognize yourself, if you actually are that? You know, that should be the answer. Why are you telling me that you are a cold-hearted person if you are a cold-hearted person? Why, like another example, more political, we should act on right now on the climate change threat. Why are you telling me we should act right now on the climate change threat if actually we should act now on the climate change threat? I don't know, guys. I hope you are getting the point. The subtle, obscene meaning behind, which is the power of the capitalist ideology. The fact that it inscribes its own contradiction into the ideology itself, making a critic towards capitalism far more difficult than in symptomatic ideologies. This inclusion of critical self-distance is just one of the cases of how freedom of choice can act as a factor preventing the choice of actual change. In a wonderful comment on Italo Svevo's Zeno's Consciousness, Alenka Zupancic, she will forgive me for if I'm pronouncing her name wrongly, shows how the very reference on a permanent freedom of choice guarantees that I will never actually do it. The fact that you have a permanent freedom of choice guarantees that you will never actually do it. And therefore, afterwards, it provides the example of smoke. The fetish behind the compulsion of smoking lies exactly in such an awareness. Like on the awareness and on the satisfaction that you can quit whenever you want. You know, things would be very different if, like, supposedly there was a, I don't know, universal rule under which once you start smoking, you cannot quit anymore. People would think far more than twice before smoking that first cigarette. It's this fetish itself, the fact that you know that you can stop smoking, that allows you. The freedom itself that allows you to keep your addiction going, that allows the addiction to keep going. And furthermore, this sensation evolves into this is gonna be the last cigarette of my life. And you truly think yourself in such a way. You truly think that you're going to make this the last cigarette of your life, and therefore this mechanism reinforces so badly this contradiction that lies in the freedom of what you're doing. For example, going back to the Hegelian relationship between knowledge, necessity, and freedom, these are good, fair example, relatable example in Zeno's Consciousness, a novel from, I don't know whether it's a novel, from Italo Svevo. There is the main character, Zenos, who is obsessed with smoking, and he is obsessed with quit his addiction towards smoking. So here we have what Hegel wanted to say, and Zizek is afterwards supporting. So the doctor in the beginning was trying to convince Zeno that smoking was bad, you cannot smoke, you're gonna have lung cancer, you're gonna die, your teeth are going to fall, and so on and so on. So Zeno was trying to, not Zeno, the doctor was trying to make Zeno aware, make Zeno know his fate. By making him know, as Hegel states, Zeno doesn't have any choice but to actualize his fate. So, seeing that this technique, this way of reproaching him, wasn't working, the doctor changed his strategy. So, the doctor changes his strategy and tells him, well, you know what? Fuck it. Like, your addiction is not really harmful. Actually, you can smoke however, like how many cigarettes you want. The thing that we should work on actually, in order to allow you to smoke with no boundaries and restriction whatsoever, is this obsession on quitting smoking. So the doctor leaves him with such a new revelation, and Zeno basically loses his mind, because the fetish that was laying behind the perverse pleasure of attempting to quit smoking was gone, because he was allowed to smoke. On the other hand, he was allowed to smoke, so he could smoke how many cigarettes he wanted, and he was smoking like a crazy. So all of his frame of reference was just thrown away. He was without any point of reference. He was losing his sanity. He was stranded into the realm of reality, and basically accepted the inevitability of his downfall. And that's in the exact point in which he loses all of his hopes. That's when Zeno quits smoking. So rather a fascinating, beautiful example of such of the Hegelian view of this relationship. So we finished the part 3 of the chapter 1, freedom, knowledge and necessity. I hope you like it. I really enjoyed this part, and we'll see you on the next one, guys. Enjoy, keep commenting, keep supporting the channel, subscribe, like, whatever you do, and I appreciate, of course. And we, like as I said before, we'll see us on the next one.